this video is about the MOS Excel 365 expert level, if you're unsure about taking it or new to MOS exams. But if you've passed the general level but are unsure whether to take the expert level, or if you've never taken the MOS exam, but use Excel regularly and are wondering which level to go for, this video is for you. I'll cover these topics: what is the MOS Excel expert, the difficulty level, estimated study time, and 3 key points that determine success or failure. Lastly, I'll also share some practice problems. I believe this is one of the most detailed videos available online about the expert level, so please watch until the end. First, let's start with the basics. The latest version is MOS 365, MOS 365. It's not MOS 2019 and 365. It used to have that name, but now it's about to change to 2019. When MOS 365 was released, the 365 part of the name disappeared. It's a bit confusing, but just remember that the latest version is MOS 365. Please take note of that. The following is the range that was added from 365 onwards. These are the new additions: managing comments, the red function, the XLOOKUP function, the filter function, and the BY function. The two that you should really pay attention to are the XLOOKUP and the filter function, along with the red function as a bonus. With these 3 new topics added to the exam scope, I can honestly say that the difficulty of the Excel expert exam has significantly increased. Both the XLOOKUP and the filter function are quite challenging. It should be quite difficult, so this is a new area, and compared to 2019, it will probably be confusing because of these things, so it would be good to keep in mind that it has become more difficult. Next, let's talk about versions. The Excel expert level is the advanced level of the MOS Excel subject. There are 2 types, general and advanced. As I mentioned earlier, the latest version is 365. Unless you have a specific reason, it's better to take the latest version. Just to add, older versions are gradually losing support. The previous version is 2019, with support ending next October. Office 2019 will be obsolete, making it better to take the latest version. Now, let's talk about some additional information. This is just a side note, but the exam fees are quite high. For the general level, it costs 12,180 yen for each attempt. So if you fail, it can really hit you hard mentally, so let's aim to pass on the first try. Next, let's talk about the practical exam. You'll actually be using Excel, and you'll submit the Excel file you worked on for grading. The third point is that you can take the exam anytime. If you go to a nearby computer school, you could take it as soon as tomorrow. Since you can take it anytime, it's easy to keep putting it off, so be careful about that. This is something that can generally be said about the MOS. Next, if you're going to take the 365 exam, make sure to check the Excel license on your computer. You need to have either Microsoft 365 or Office 2021. Here's how to check your license. First, open Excel and click on the File tab. Then click on Account at the bottom left. When you click on it, this screen will appear. The license information is written here. If it says Microsoft 365 Office or Office 2021, then you're good to go. So, what's the problem with Office 2019? It's this: the new features like the XLOOKUP and filter functions can't be used in 2019. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, these 2 are quite challenging. This is it, the added range XLOOKUP and filter functions cannot be used in 2019. And as I said earlier, these 2 quite difficult. First of all, if you haven't worked with these functions before, you won't be able to solve the problems. If you can't solve these 2, passing the expert level will be quite difficult. It's important to note that there are functions that are crucial and not available in 2019, which means you'll need a license for 365 or Office 2021. However, if you can't get that, there are 2 options. One is to subscribe to Microsoft 365 on a monthly basis, and usually they have a free trial for the first month. If you sign up when you need it, I think you can get by for free within a month. So one option is to borrow a computer that has those versions. Alternatively, you could borrow a computer from a friend, so studying isn't impossible. This is the diagram. Excel expert. Word might be easier for some, but if you're not good at memorizing but are good with functions, you might find Excel easier. It's a close match, but when it comes to the advanced levels of Excel and Word, Excel expert is harder, because it deals with more complex functions. So in the MOS certifications, this one is the most difficult. However, this is just my personal opinion, so please take it as a reference. Next, the estimated study period is about 1 to 3 months. If you've barely used Excel, expect 2 to 3 months. For computer users new to Excel, expect a month for general skills, 1 to 2 months for expert skills. If you're at the level of not knowing what click means or what the enter key is, then it's going to take a lot more time. Someone who has used a computer but barely used Excel. For the general level, you might need about a month, and for the expert level, 1 to 2 months, totaling around 2 to 3 months. If you barely used it, it's better to start with the general level instead of jumping to the expert level. This will make your learning smoother. If you have some experience with functions like VLOOKUP from practical use, or if you've already passed the general level, you can aim to pass the expert level in 1 to 2 months. That's the study period image. Learning will become smoother, and you'll be able to complete it quickly. Next, I want to share 3 key points that can determine your pass or fail in the Excel Expert exam. They are 1. Functions, 2. Conditional formatting using formulas, and 3. Complex formulas. You need to master these 3 to pass. Let's talk about functions. There are so many types. There are tons of variations like average if and average ifs, and then you have filter, PMT, NPR, and so on. As you try to memorize all these, it can get really confusing about where to specify what. Let me show you a few examples, starting with VLOOKUP. Here's what that function looks like. I'll take a screenshot of this. Now let's do one more. This time we'll use SUMIF, or rather SUMIFs. Let's do one more. Now let's do SUMIF, or rather SUMIFs. This is the function. So, there are only 2 types like this, but there are many functions to remember, such as argument types and functions. So what is the best argument and where should I specify what? It's very easy to get confused. That's why you have to be very careful when doing it. During the actual exam, if you get nervous and flustered, you might not be able to solve the problems. That's why understanding functions is the first key point that can determine your pass or fail. Next, the second point is conditional formatting using formulas. Let me show you an actual screen. For example, if you have a table like this, you might want to display it in red if the average is 400 or above. That's a bit off, isn't it? Sorry about that. I meant, if the average is 400 or above, please display the employee's name in red. I'll skip over the setup method a bit while I do this. What is this conditional formatting? Average is over 400. In that case, it will be in red. It's tricky to set it up like this. Once you set it up, I made a little mistake there. Is that right? The condition of over 400 was a bit tricky. That's right, it doesn't turn red at 332 degrees, but it does turn red at over 400. Writing formulas is unique and requires a different approach than regular functions, making it difficult. Combining this with various function arguments adds confusion. Use formulas for conditional formatting and mixed referencing. Mixed referencing combines absolute and relative references. Use absolute referencing for rows and relative for columns, or vice versa. It combines both. Keep this in mind. This is the second point, using formulas for conditional formatting. And finally, we have mixed referencing. To put it simply, mixed referencing is a combination of absolute and relative references. For rows, you use absolute referencing, but for columns, you use relative referencing, or the other way around. It's a combination of those. You really need to keep this in mind, or else it will be tough to pass. These 3 points are the deciding factor for whether you pass or fail. I will introduce some practice questions. There are 3 types of questions in total. Basic questions that you should not miss, and 80% of the questions that will determine whether you pass or fail will be correct, so you will need to get them right to pass. Finally, there are applied questions. These are questions of a level of difficulty that you can ignore at worst. I will introduce each of these 3. First, the basic questions. Please set up your workbook to automatically save recovery data every 10 minutes. You don't need any files for this. You can set it up just by opening Excel. If you'd like, try setting it up together. First, let's open the Excel file and go to the File tab. In the bottom left, go to Options. This is in the Save tab. It was already set to 10 minutes from the start. Now let's change this to the specified value. And that's it. We're done. Well, it has a similar vibe to the general level. Now, for another question, starting from cell A8, please input continuous data from 1001 to 1100. You'll create this using the continuous data dialog box. So first, Starting from cell A8, we're going to use A8 as the starting point. From 1001, we'll input up to 2001 in cell A8. Then, with the cursor still on 1001, we'll go here to the Home tab, creating a series of continuous data with the fill feature to make the range into a column. So the lowland area goes up to 1100, so I set it to 1100 and entered it. This created continuous data up to 1100. So, the problems you can't afford to miss are around this level of difficulty. If you're missing these, it's pretty clear you won't pass, right? I think you got that idea. It's just that the types of questions are different from the general level. Next, we have the problems that differentiate pass and fail. These are also quite difficult, and you should think that you need to get at least 80% correct to pass. Please use the randarray function to randomly display either 1000, 2000, or 3000. You can also add other formulas along with the randarray function. It can be in any column, so you can just use that sheet as it is. Since the previous one is in the way, should I just delete it and use the adjacent cell? It was a bit small, so I'll make it bigger. So first, let's input the randarray function. Just a quick note, when I input, I recommend using the function button. In my course, I recommend using the function button. You can activate it with Shift plus F3, but let's set that aside for now. We'll use this screen to input, and that's my approach in this course. So, I'll be using this screen to explain. So, let's display a random number, either 1000, 2000, or 30. It's a bit like that. The queue's just about adequate. Well, let's assume we have a column with 8 rows. So, in a separate column, we have 1000, 2000, and 3000, and this is a bit of a trick. I'm going to use numbers 1 to 3. In my code, I can just use 1 to indicate true, and then I'll hit enter. Let's assume that the column is up to this point. First, the numbers 1 to 3 are randomly generated. Then we change this. We want to make it 1000, 2000, 3000. So we multiply it by 1000. Then the values from 1000 to 3000 will be random. That's it. Next, in the column for the scores, if the score is 80 or above, we want to display an A. If it's 60 or above, we display a B. And if it doesn't meet either condition, we display nothing. Please input the formula for that. Alright, first let's prepare the data. Can we create another sheet for that? Okay, I prepared the score column like this. So, what's the problem statement? If it's 80 or above, we show an A. If it's 60 or above, we show a B. And if it doesn't meet either condition, we display nothing. So, I'll input the formula here. If you want to do this, please prepare a column like this. So, let's use the IFS function. So with the logical formula, what was in the adjacent cell again? If it's 80 or above, then it's an A. If it's 80 or above, then it's an A. And similarly, for the adjacent cell. If it's 60 or above, I made a little mistake there. This is set to 80 or below. If it's 60 or above, last is B. If it doesn't meet either condition, then it won't display anything. By the way, 1 means true, so I'll set it to true and hit enter. When you copy it, if it's over 60, it becomes B. If it's over 80 here and here, it becomes A. And if it's under 60, nothing is displayed. That's it. In addition to the IFS function and the landarray function we just learned, there are many other types of functions. You need to be able to enter them without making any mistakes. And finally, the applied problem. I'll show you this in advance, but it's a difficult problem that you can ignore. This is a problem of the same level of difficulty as the actual exam. So, just by looking at the screen, you can think, oh, I see. This is the level of problems that come up. I'm just introducing it to give you an idea. You can ignore this level of problem because it only appears about 10% of the time. The exam has a total of 25 questions. And since this advanced problem only appears about 10% of the time, you don't need to stress too much about it. Instead of focusing on these advanced problems, it's more important to make sure you don't miss the basic problems that separate pass and fail. So, here it is. Based on the table in the sheet, please input a formula in cell B13 to display the total amount for due dates that are today or later. Sorry, I don't have a practice file prepared, so please visualize it on the screen. So first, here's this table. And with this, I want to input a formula here that shows the total amount for due dates that are today or later. By the way, what's today's date? It's October 1st. I want to display the total amount for dates from October 1st, 2020. And it's here. So, let's get started. Equals sumif. Well, either way is fine, but I'll do it with semif. So I won't be explaining this, just try to get a feel for it. If it's hard to understand or too fast, I apologize. This isn't a tutorial. I'm just trying to convey the general idea, so please bear with me. The total range we're looking at is the amount. And the criteria range is the due date. So the conditions are, since the savings are from today's date onwards, first display the date from now on. Then, write the today function in double quotes. Write it like this, and now you can express the date from today onwards. Now, if you press enter, I'm sorry, I forgot to put ando between today. So even I made a mistake and it's a bit confusing. By the way, did this really come up in the actual exam? I'm recreating the level of difficulty that I faced when I took the exam, so yes, it really did come up. So, hitting enter here, it might be a bit tricky to verify, but this should give us the total for today. Or later. Should I check it just to be sure? Since today is October 1st. It's written in small letters below here, but I'll make it a little bigger for 33,200 yen. So here it is. The total is 33,240, and looking at the result, it seems like it's done correctly since it's 33,240. So, this is the advanced problem. Just to reiterate, you don't need to think, wow, this looks difficult, when you see the last one. This is an advanced problem that you don't need to solve. In my lectures, I consider these really tough problems as advanced and not necessary to tackle. Well, just to make sure you don't panic when you see it in the actual exam, and to help you recognize that this is an advanced problem, please take a look at it overall. Well, if possible, I'd like you to try it out yourself, but just to give you an idea, this is the level of problems that are not too difficult. On the other hand, the problems that separate pass and fail are the ones I mentioned earlier. If you can solve problems at this level, you can pass without any issues. So, please be careful not to think, wow, this is impossible, when you see the advanced problems I just mentioned. That wraps up my explanation about the expert level. And finally, just a quick announcement. I'm Japason. This is a book about the MOS-365 expert. I'm offering video lectures like this one. I've included the details in the description, so if you're interested, please take a look. So that's it. Thank you for watching up to this point. This was Japason.